As a child, I was fearful of many things: the dark, ghosts, strangers. I was afraid of cats. I thought that they would grow up to become lions and tigers. And I was afraid of going to sleep because of nightmares. And the caregiver who raised me was this very strong woman from the Philippines, and she seemed to me to be the embodiment of fearlessness. So I remember asking her when I was a kid, Yaya, does anything ever scare you? And she looked at me and said, Yes, sweetie, I'm afraid of my own anger. So as we witness this ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, I think there's tremendous fear worldwide. Yeah, the Ukrainians are fearing for survival. The Russians fear for their future, especially those who oppose the war. All of Europe is fearing escalation. Here in the US, analysts tell us, you are already in World War III. It broke out while you were sleeping. The question is whether it will be nuclear. Yeah, in Asia, everyone's keeping an eye on China and Taiwan. Very sad to read, for me anyway, was about how people in Bosnia, Syria, and Georgia are getting re-traumatized by all this news about the war because they have actually lived through bombardments, sieges. Yeah, there was a woman in Syria who said, I would not wish that even upon my worst enemy, just the suffering that she has endured. And then for a while, I was wondering too, like what's happening with the people of Chechnya, right? Because the current war keeps getting compared to it. And to my surprise to see, oh, they are fighting in this war on both sides. Yeah, the warlord who is pro-Russian that was installed in Chechnya has been sent in by Mr. Putin in many of the conflicts in the region because it's a strategy to get the ethnic minorities to fight the Slavs. So that's what the Chechnyan warlord has been doing. And then I read too that there are Chechens who are opposed to the warlord, so now they're fighting on the Ukrainian side. So it's a royal mess. And I have to keep reminding myself, my greatest fear is my own anger and my own afflictions. Right? That's the commitment I make as a Buddhist, to really try and work with my mind. And I will say that's been challenging. And I'm already anxious by disposition. That's the point of the intro. So I've been nervous in the past week because I think the US news, the way I read it anyway, it feels to me like it's getting kind of hawkish. I don't know, for me, there's a bit of like, oh, it feels a bit too much like 2001. Yeah, or anytime I read news that seems to be moving toward like, the US must get involved or something like that, I kind of go, ah. I have a very strong aversion to actually anything that says military response is the only way. And I think a lot of that comes from learning about war through poetry. Like I've shared here how, it made such an impression on my mind when I was 14 and I read that poem by Wilfred Owen that he was 18 when he fought in the First World War, and his poem ends with saying, please do not tell children who are ardent for some glory that old lie, it is sweet and good to die for your country. Yeah, dulce decorum est pro patria mori. So that's kind of burned in my mind that anytime anything moves in that direction, like mentally I go, propaganda, don't go there. Yeah. I think too, the year after that, I remember I watched Saving Private Ryan. I don't know if people saw that movie. It was actually rated R in Singapore for violence, but I managed to watch it overseas. And I was 15, and I don't remember anything about that movie except the first 15 minutes. Yeah, people who've seen it do. It's basically a realistic recreation of the Battle of Normandy. And as a kid, I had read about it in textbooks, and it's mentioned as like, this incredible amphibious assault, yeah, this decisive moment that turned the tide of war, and it's like a victory and so on. And then Spielberg basically recreates what happened. Like vets had to leave the cinemas because it was so realistic. He has you in the boat with the young men, right? And it's quiet, and already they're seasick and throwing up, and you're like, oh, okay. And it's like this weird metal thing, and then it lands on the beach, and the front is lowered, and immediately the whole first row just gets cut down by gunfire. And because of the way he's filmed it, you feel like you're in the boat with the men. Yeah, you can feel the whole boat going, oh my goodness. And then the commander in the back is telling these men, jump over the bodies, go, go, go. And these young men are carrying these huge packs, trying to wade through the water to get to the beach. And for me anyway, I realized, oh, that's what that battle was about. You got 160,000 men ran across the beach while people shot at them. That's what it was. I'm like, how is this even a victory? Or, till today, I think they're still counting the number of casualties. So, and these are the depictions of war by the people who won. So I think that's really what has stayed with me. Yeah, that ultimately there is no happy ending. Yeah, there are no victors. They're just casualties. And so, anytime there's a lot of war reporting, I try and read a lot of different sources from different angles, nonprofits, think tanks. Of course, we talk to people who are related to the situation if we know them. I will say something that gave me some relief in the last few days was reading an article by a guest opinion writer in the New York Times. His name is Tanner Greer. It's been on the front page of the Times for the last 3 days. Tanner Greer, sorry. I tried to look him up, and it says he's an independent researcher in Taiwan, and then you don't get much more than that, which then makes you really wonder who this person is, who wrote in. But I think they changed the title of the article too. At first, the title was something like, Ukraine has a righteous cause, but that should not guide foreign policy, something like that. Or he says, realism must guide our reaction to Russia's invasion. So if you will bear with me, I just thought to read 2 paragraphs from this, and then I will summarize them in the Dharma terms, which probably takes 2 sentences. So this Mr. Greer says, even very experienced officials, such as those that led the Bush administration, can fall prey to the logic of appropriateness when the circumstances conspire against consequentialist thinking. September 11 imbued the administration's debates with a moral outrage that, though justified by the horror of the attacks, clouded officials' long-term thinking. The Bush team was seized by an intuitive conviction that securing the United States from future terrorist attacks could occur only by disrupting Middle Eastern society as forcefully as the terrorists had disrupted America's. But this judgment was never exposed to careful scrutiny. Fear of a repeated terrorist attack led the Bush administration to speed up the decision-making cycle and suspend the review process that would have forced the administration to question faulty assumptions about Saddam Hussein's intentions, or more carefully weigh the potential consequences of war. The result was that the administration seriously engaged with the consequences of its decisions only long after they had been made. Yeah, so in essence, people got mad, couldn't think clearly, and attacked other people. And then figured out that there were long-term consequences, and who gets to live with them? We do, right now. And then this writer went on to say, there's a danger policymakers forced by crisis to act outside formal decision-making processes face, especially if the crisis inspires the sort of indignation and horror that powered American policy after September 11. The invasion of Ukraine is exactly this sort of event. Mr. Putin's invasion is a violation of the moral norms upon which the European order stands. The maximalist language emanating from some Western capitals is a natural, if unwise, response to this sort of atrocity. So anyhow, for me, it sounded to me like a call for moderation, to slow down. I will say personally, I have not even begun to wrap my head around what's happened in Iraq and Afghanistan in the last decades, to even process and grieve that. So to be on the edge of, here we are moving on to another crisis, it's like, I need to slow down and take a deep breath and take a long view. And I think that's what the Dharma encourages us to do, right? To take the long view, where, as long as we're making decisions out of fear and anger, or, I don't know, a desire for guts and glory, nobody wins. Yeah, that's the afflictions. And I would say from a Buddhist perspective, we're taking an extremely long view, right, of multiple lifetimes. Life after life. Something Venerable wrote, I couldn't find the source, I've been hunting for it. It might have been in one of the free distribution books. But when I was a baby Buddhist, I remember reading something she wrote about how, in this life, it appears that this group is a victim and this group is a perpetrator. But of course, in a past life, the victim group has been the perpetrator group has been the victim. Right? And then right now, then you just create the same cause again and again. Right? You're attacked, you get angry, you retaliate. Next life, you are the perpetrator, you attack, and then you... And that is the real thing to fear, I think. That kind of endless cycle of violence that we subject ourselves and others to in cyclic existence. And in trying to empathize with Mr. Putin, it's been interesting to see, I think aggressors have victim mentality. Yeah, I guess Venerable's been trying to point that out to us for a long time. Yeah, he has this mind of, everyone's out to get me, right? The West is encroaching upon Russia. It's like you look at the map, it's huge. Yeah, it's like the West, people are going to kill me and hang me from a lamppost. Regime change, right? And he's terrified. Yeah, and it made me think too, yeah, if you kill and torture a lot of people, of course you're constantly afraid that that's going to happen to you. Someone's going to betray you at some point. Yeah. So in trying to generate, in my mind, he's a, quote, easy target, right? Like, oh, this is the person responsible for the brutality we're seeing. I did some reading about his background. And it was, he was born in Leningrad 8 years after the siege of Leningrad by Nazi Germany, which lasted 2.5 years. So imagine, the city had all these people were just blockaded inside for 2.5 years. It killed 1.5 million Russians. His own elder brother died during the siege. His mother fainted of starvation and was left for dead. She was with the corpses and then woke up. And he lost many, many family members in the Second World War. But now we see he is doing the same to others. Right? Having lived through that own pain himself, he is besieging others' families. He is starving other people's mothers, killing other people's brothers, and creating the cause for that to happen to himself again and again and again. Yeah, so we really need to get out of cyclic existence, So anyhow, now that I've gotten you all sobered and depressed before lunch, I want to offer 2 creative solutions. As Venerable often reminds us, you must find a creative solution to conflict. So I've been visualizing, of course, Venerable children teaching the Dharma to different governments. Yeah, as we see, Mr. Zelensky has had this platform to talk to all these different governments. Like, just wouldn't it be nice if someone who was spreading the message of peace or how to work with your afflictions had that platform? Yeah, to speak to Congress. Yeah, imagine Venerable speaks to Kremlin. Venerable Sangye Kadro, we can invite you to join her too. Like a good broadcast to teach the Dharma to all these different governments. Seems like a stretch, right? So here's another proposal. This might be a bit closer to possibility. I was reading about how Mr. Putin has 4 dogs that he loves very much. Their names are Buffy, Yume, Vernie, and Pasha. Although I think his favorite dog, named Coney, died in 2014. So anyhow, apparently these dogs are his best friends. So maybe, an independent party could dog nap the dogs. And then, if he agrees to peace talks, you return him 1 dog. And then you negotiate for certain things and you return the next dog, right? Like if he really cares about them, right? Of course, we shouldn't harm those dogs. Yeah, they're innocent. Yeah, but, they can become the, bargaining chip. And of course, if he doesn't care about the dogs at all, then we can give them to, the White House or other Western parties. I was reading about how, the Bidens lost 1 dog. Yeah, the champ died. And then Major was sent away for biting people. Yeah, and then so now they have a new puppy called Commander. I want to say it's kind of hard to be a White House dog to have such names. Yeah, you don't get a name like Maitri or Karuna. You get Commander, Major. And then they have a new cat called Willow. So, I'm sure they would be pleased with some more dogs. But I think it would be very hard to send a dog to the UK because I read that they actually have had a cat in residence in government since Henry VIII. And then that position of the cat was formalized in 2011. He is called the Chief Mouser to the Cabinet Office. He lives in the PM's office. He uses the coat of arms of the Queen. The current cat is called Larry. So, but you see, if you want to be a powerful cat, you have to kill mice. Yeah. So it's not, everything comes at a price. So maybe better to be an Abbey cat. I think you'll get a peaceful name. You get to listen to the Dharma sometimes. You don't have to catch mice. And hopefully you create the causes for a precious human rebirth.